Yes, thank you, Greg, and thanks, Marie. That was great. Quick intro for myself. My name is Paul Griffin. I'm head of commercial for Littlepay. I was lucky enough to be involved with Littlepay right at the very conception of it, which was a lot of fun. I've had a couple of years away, and now I'm very happy to be back. I'm leading what is now a global expansion of our transit payment solution. And it's certainly an exciting time for Littlepay, an exciting time for the industry at the moment. You know, everyone's trying different things, from QR super apps in Asia, EMV rollouts in the USA, even facial recognition being given a brave tryout in Moscow. And we've heard all about that in some of these sessions earlier. It's been a really interesting event. I think one thing is clear from all of this, that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. From our side, we're a transit PSP. We only process payments. Our focus is on EMV, and I've been asked to talk today a little bit about the extreme end of that scale. So what does a transit fare collection system look like without any of this legacy baggage? Or maybe how would you build a system from scratch today if you were given a clean sheet of paper? So, and also a realistic view of that. So how could you transition from what we have today to that kind of idealistic setup? Just a quick recap for anyone that doesn't know Littlepay already. Back in 2016, we saw the work that was being done at TfL. It's groundbreaking stuff. We saw the costs involved. We saw how hard it was and how hard it would be to replicate that for other operators or for any kind of small or medium-sized authority or city. We wanted to be able to enable any operator, large or small, any authority, any city, large or small, to be able to accept bank cards on the vehicles, but without having to invest multi-million dollars and have a 3-year massive SI build operate type contract. So we did this. We built out a cloud native transit specific PSP platform from scratch. We didn't base it on a retail platform. We built it for purpose to do MTT, PAYG processing. And we've then done really well. We switched on EMV acceptance for most of the major operators in the UK. In total, we've now onboarded over 250 individual transit operators across the USA, and now sort of broadening out our horizons across the globe. So recently, we've been rolling out in California with some pilot rollouts there on light rail and bus. We've been busy in Europe as well with some metro systems, city scale metro systems. We've got a national scale rollout in Finland, going across multiple cities. And pleased to announce that finally Costa Rica has come to a conclusion, and they've awarded Littlepay with the transit PSP contract to process that. So it's been, you know, a busy time, especially this last couple of years. And I think that's really indicative, not just of Littlepay and its product, but it's indicative really of the momentum that EMV has in the market at this moment in time in the industry. We're in the right place with the right product at the right time. So this is the result of this work. We're very much a partner-based organization. We can't do anything without partners. We don't compete with our partners. We don't build apps. We don't build ABT systems. We just process the payments. We've established now a wide range of integrated device partners. So all of these device partners on the left are ready to roll with Littlepay at any time. So that's offering transit operators a lot more choice in the market, being able to bring in best of breed, choose the right type of validator for the right environment. We've fine-tuned the process internally, and we've invested heavily in the tools required to onboard any new partners. So getting a validator integrated to our system and passing an L3 test, we've got down to a fine art. Similarly, on the right-hand side, we've got a large range of acquiring options we can now process for any operator anywhere in the globe, practically. Our MasterCard and CyberSource gateway solutions bring us a huge range of acquirers around the world. But we can also work with domestic payment schemes, as we have done in France with La Banque Postale and Carte Bancaire. And we have, you know, quite a number of dedicated, and a growing number actually, of dedicated acquiring connections that we can connect directly into. So we've done all that work, and it's ready to roll. But let's take a step back and look at sort of what this deck is really about. This slide is an approximation. It's an attempt to describe the mix of fare revenues before and then after, on the right-hand side, an initial EMV acceptance project. So it's obviously an approximation. Every operator, every agency, every city has a completely different fare collection profile. So, for example, in Sweden, where we have really solid mobile solutions, integrated trip planning, real-time info, etc., there's no real cash to displace in those areas. So this diagram would look slightly different. EMV is rolled out in places like that, more for convenience trips, singles in the urban centre, visitors to the city, that kind of thing. If we look at the contrasting situations, such as USA, where we're still very much stuck on cash handling, a fare box at the front of the bus, EMV is absolutely about replacing cash in those environments. So again, that diagram would look quite different. Broadly speaking, though, we can see that the green EMV boxes introduced into the fare mix, sort of top right-hand side, reducing the cash and the smart card usage on full fare singles. And then in the middle area where we include sort of tap-on, tap-off fare calculations, if we include daily caps, weekly caps, and monthly caps, we start to eat into and displace a lot of that traditional prepaid passes business, particularly on the smart card and the paper areas. And capping, best fare promises, really becoming a very important talking point in places like the USA, where this concept of equity, fairness comes into the conversation more and more. We should all really question why, over history, the cheapest fares are only ever made available on a prepaid basis. It creates a situation where only a very wealthy segment of the ridership can afford to pay up front for an annual or for a monthly pass. So this concept of pay-as-you-go with capping is bringing fairness and equity back into the system, which is great. We've seen that introducing capping in these regions and these environments really does drive much stronger adoption of pay-as-you-go at the expense of these typical pre-purchase type of fares. That's especially so post-pandemic, when people don't really know how much travel they're going to be doing each week, or when the next lockdown is coming. So, depending on the situation, how it's implemented, at the end of a basic EMV implementation, this is what we see. We see about a 20 to 45% adoption for contactless EMV. But if we take a look at that after EMV sort of mix, it throws up a few ideas and a few themes and areas to improve. So if you look at the top left, how do we reduce smart card usage? Some of that blue area in the top left is the unbanked. How do we serve them better with this new technology? How do we get cash out of the system? In that middle pre-purchase section, how can modern technologies like EMV better support prepaid fares? And then at the bottom, something that isn't really touched very much at the moment with EMV, how do we solve for concessions with this new modern payments architecture and making use of retail and banking and payments infrastructure that exists? And then at the bottom here, can payments innovation help improve ridership? This is a more general question about how can we use EMV as an enabling technology to contribute to the wider goals of mass and thereby increase ridership. So first off, how do we serve the unbanked? The answer is pretty straightforward. It's a prepaid EMV solution. And it comes about really because the world has changed. Terminals are now all online and can talk to the back office. There is really no need whatsoever for complex stored value smart card technology to be handed out like sweets to all the riders. It doesn't make any sense. That functionality isn't required and it's not used. The costs of managing those smart card programs are sky high, which is relevant when you have millions of people out there using it. But these costs of card issuance, card management, top-up machines, customer service, it's a huge distraction from the real business of just moving people from A to B. From our perspective as Littlepay, once we've implemented an initial EMV rollout, the demand for cash and top-up infrastructure is naturally reduced. So you might go from having 10 TVMs in a hall to maybe 3 or 4, but you still have this horrible baseline of cost for the whole system. And gradually over time, you're going to be left with an increasingly smaller and smaller number of cash and smart card users that are generally classified as unbanked or are more often sort of unwilling to use their bank card. Supporting that dwindling number of riders is going to become unsustainable. And at that point, and it depends when you reach that point, but at that point, a low-cost EMV prepaid issuance program makes a huge amount of sense. It's proven secure, standards-based, it's interoperable across vendors, it's interoperable across other operators, across modes, different form factors. I think the question really is, why not just let the existing banking infrastructure and the retail top-up networks do the work for you? There's no real need anymore to create this parallel infrastructure. So once you go down this prepaid EMV route, there are a huge amount of options, from general purpose reloadables, private label scheme cards. It's a subject in its own right. If we look at a couple of examples like Stockholm or Sweden, leading the way with a white label approach, there's other cities that might go down that same route. It's just a card technology swap, really. But then on the more complex areas, we're seeing, great ideas and great results by just skipping the plastic completely, skipping the issuance part, provisioning that EMV prepaid product directly into a digital wallet. And cities like Sydney with Opal Connect certainly leading the way there, really interesting. Makes it available on Android as well as iOS, which is great. Obviously, to do any of this, you have to accept bank cards first. You have to run an EMV acceptance project. But once that EMV acceptance program is complete, the door is then very much wide open to replacing legacy smart cards with a more suitable EMV-based technology. So if we solve that unbanked problem, we get to turn some of these blue legacy boxes into nice, shiny green EMV boxes like that. So replacing a lot of this stuff with EMV prepaid programs. The next question on the right there is, how do we better address prepayment, this area of pre-purchasing fares? So beyond the introduction of EMV capping on the right-hand side, how else can we address the need for pre-purchase? And this is our approach to the problem. We've implemented now what's generally known from the UK as Model 3, but more internationally as Card as Authority to Travel. To achieve this, we have built out an entirely new, full-fledged card not present e-commerce payments processing solution. So that new service from Littlepay allows us to handle the card not present pre-purchase transaction from the web or app in the first instance. During that pre-purchase transaction, we will store in our token vault a token for that EMV card or that wallet, the payment instrument, that allows us to recognize that card later on when it's tapped on the vehicle or at the barrier gates. So when the user taps their card or wallet, we detect it, we look it up, we find any products associated with the card. It could be anything from a monthly pass or carnet of singles, and we allow that travel accordingly. If it's not registered, then it goes through as a pay-as-you-go transaction. So no more opening apps, fumbling for a QR code, trying to get through the barrier gates during the travel. All you need to do is present the card or the wallet that you used to make that pre-purchase, whether it was a monthly pass or a weekly pass, or even a single longer distance ticket that wouldn't really suit the MTT mode of scaling. So we're not suggesting that we're getting rid of QR codes anytime soon. They definitely have a really important place in fare collection that we use widely for many years, but we can certainly start to cross out some of this more legacy baggage around paper and smart card-based passes and replace this with an EMV Card as Authority to Travel or Model 3 strategy.
About 2 minutes, Paul.
No problem. The next step is concessions and discounts. So how do we solve for concessions? The conversations around unbanked often get mixed up with concessions, and an assumption emerges that concession holders are unlikely to have a bank card. What we find is that most concessions are either age or status related, and not only do they have bank cards, but they want to pay for their discounted travel with those cards. So we aim to combine them both. We take that Card as Authority to Travel functionality and we create a registration process for the riders. So riders register their own bank issued card. We perform the verification card scheme checks. In this USA case, it was using a DMV lookup for age and status. And ultimately, once the card checks out and the eligibility has been established, we can then associate a product, say a 50% discount, with that card. We apply that discount whenever we see the card used in the network. So again, once we start to think about EMV for discounts and concessions, we've got a whole load of interesting opportunities We can borrow techniques from the digital banking world, wearables for kids, photo printed EMV cards, and we can partner with banks and maybe they want to acquire, a teenager student cohort of customers. So again, opportunities to adopt and adapt existing payments technology to solve these problems is certainly wide open. So we solve for concessions through a combination of EMV card issuance and bank issued cards. I think the final point to touch on then is how we might improve the EMV experience beyond simple bank card acceptance. And this is a new area that we've been working on this last year, making use of our card not present gateway. So this allows us to capture a token when someone registers their card in the system. It allows us to recognize that card when it's tapped in a pay-as-you-go environment. So this allows us to engage in real time with a mobile app provider. And again, you can see here the options are quite wide. So as a rider, immediately on tapping, I can be notified of the event. I can be encouraged to ride more or reach my daily or weekly cap. So I can receive a message that might say, travel 3 more times this week and the rest of the week travel is on us. We can register kids' cards, get updates when they travel, notified when they get to school or not. And all of this is already available. So we've been demonstrating this technology, and we're now at the beginning really of integrating with mobile app providers to achieve just this. The last area to touch on really is multi-operator capping. We've done multi-operator capping. A great example of this is in the south of England back in 2019. The UK is now pushing for an EMV capping across multi-operators and multiple systems. I think the wider point here is that if we look at this and what we've done, it really is the foundation for a mass payment system. And if everyone has been tapping and using their bank cards for transit for several years, and we're moving to these EMV citywide caps, this behavior has become ingrained for the user. And for mass to be adopted, instead of issuing a CNP new token, it really needs to integrate into these EMV schemes that have already been successful and are already, in the UK, it's almost government mandated now that we're going to be having EMV capping across systems. So in any case, it would be cheaper for a MAS system to deploy if it makes use of all this existing infrastructure and successful payments infrastructure without actually introducing a new layer of validation technology being a QR code. So I think the integration of MAS is going to be a really important point, and it should be seen as an evolution of these payment systems that we've already successfully deployed. So the future for us seems pretty clear. It's about using standardized payment rails that will drive interoperability across hardware, across regions, across operators, and across different back offices. It's about learning from retail and fintech and existing payments industry. But more than anything, it's about partnerships and having an open approach and being willing to foster these partnerships. There's still plenty of work to do on the bottom right-hand side there, mainly around issuance and phasing out of smart cards, but we're certainly working hard on that. Most of the rest of this is done and it's ready to roll. So there is our vision of the EMV-only future. We think we can solve for most of the problems in transit payments using this technology, bringing together best-of-breed partnerships. We're not in any way suggesting that any authority should or will do all of this. We just wanted to sort of highlight the different tools that are in the box to solve these different problems and have a different view of EMV, because it can be used in different ways to solve different problems. It's not just about accepting a bank card. The idea here is just to allow authorities really to pick and choose what works for them. It needs modular thinking, it needs a willingness to procure differently, and a willingness to have these sort of cross-industry partnerships. So